going to be a little different than things I've done in the past. Number one difference being that I want to try to be practical. This won't be about regular stuff. It's about personal stuff, emotional stuff. When I was in high school, I went to an advanced placement class for calculus. But the little school I was in didn't have enough students to have a class of our own, so we went to another nearby school to take the class. And they had their own, student handbook there and so on. And, as a new student, I read through the student handbook like every other student does, I suppose. And I came across something in their student handbook that was forbidding degrading epithets. And I thought, what high school student knows what a degrading epithet is? And if he knows that, he's probably not going to use them anyway. But, being curious, I looked up what degrading epithets were. It's basically name calling. Now, I've read some things and did a little research on name calling. And name calling is a common technique for armies. When we get a war against a foe, most of the time the opponent will have a nickname. One of the main things that this name does is it helps soldiers dehumanize the enemy, thus making it easier for them to kill them without the guilt normally associated with murdering people. Because they're sort of less than human. They're not like us. They're not equal to us. They're not just brothers and sisters, even when they are. In the Civil War, we saw Confederates and Yankees, as the labels were put, because they're not like us. They weren't separatists and unionists. They were Yankees and rebels. And thus we break down one of the key factors in the bloodiest war in American history. Now, today we often associate name calling with bullying and so on, but there are certain socially acceptable degrading epithets that are commonly used and normally against the majority, the people that we are allowed to hate. Rich people, baby boomers. I hate to bring race into it, but you know what I'm talking about. So there are these acceptable epithets, which means it's okay to have that group of people be your enemy. Other people are more protected. It's not socially acceptable to declare certain people groups your enemy. And I don't know that declaring people an enemy is always bad. I think most of the time it is. But when is it not okay? Well, It's not okay when the people being discriminated against don't deserve to be your enemy, right? They've done nothing to you, against you, or about you, but you feel free to call them a name so that in your own mind you think it's okay to disrespect, disregard, be prejudiced against, or otherwise degrade them because they're not like us. They're not progressive. They're deplorables. One of the ones that really gets me is this notion that there are toxic people. Now I know there are some people that are very difficult to get along with, but I think all too often people are labeled as toxic just because we don't want to take the time to deal with them. And granted, they may take more time than the average person. Let's say they are, Ayn Rand style objectivists, as she liked to call them. You know, totally self-absorbed. The only good is their own good. The only thing they need to pursue is their own happiness. And if people, happen to be around them and want to share in that happiness, hey, they're okay with that. Empathy? Not so much. Caring for others? Okay, well, they might if they have to, I suppose, if you force us. But still, I don't think these people should be called toxic, because toxic is a degrading epithet, and you have to be careful about labeling people your enemy, because when they are your enemy, they rightly feel that they've been victimized by you, thus enforcing their premise that they don't have to care about you either. Now, there are certain situations where it is good to let your opponent know that they're your adversary. It may be good to label them with some degrading epithet if this allows you to have a better conscience about attacking them. And let's say it's your job to attack them, to attack their character, to defame them. Right? You're in court, and you need to prove that their testimony is invalid because they're a bad person, or they are a liar, or they are toxic. Take it from me, degrading epithets are toxic. And unless you're in a special circumstance where you need to declare the other party your enemy, don't do it. There's no reason to go around saying, oh, you're wrong, you're wrong. That's not going to help anybody change. That's not even going to help them understand why you think they're wrong. You got to be civilized enough to treat them with the same respect you expect, you demand from them. Those asynchronous relationships where I can demand anything from you and you can ask nothing of me is really the root of many, many problems. I think I'll wrap this rant up and get on with my life. But for now, don't call people names. Degrading epithets are toxic.